Good day, everyone. So it's another opportunity for another lecture series. But this time we're looking at lipids. We're going to start with looking at lipids. Now, lipids are very vital to health. Lipids are very, very vital to health. In as much as the pathology of lipids is more concerning, but lipids are also very vital to many of the chemical processes that take place in the body. They're important, they have various functions, and we're going to be looking at all of them. So, we're not only going to focus on the bad side of lipids, but we're going to start with the good side of lipids before we now look at the pathology of lipids, because our major concern is the pathological aspect of lipids, because this is chemical pathology in clinical chemistry. So, what are lipids? If we want to start now, lipids are a class of hydrophobic molecules. When you say hydrophobic, that means they have phobia for water, and then they are non-soluble in water. So they are hydrophobic molecules, and they are synthesized by simply condensation of thioesters or isoprene units. And so they are soluble in organic solvents, but they are almost insoluble in water. Now, if you are looking at lipids chemically, they are usually very enriched in carbon and hydrogen molecules. And when they are lysed, particularly when they are subjected to hydrolysis, they yield fatty acids and alcohol that is esterified with fatty acids. So, lipids are complex, some are complex, and some are simple. Now, the complex lipids, they contain chemical groups that are attached to them, such as sialic, phosphoryl, amino, and sulfate groups. I said complex lipids are not just lipids on their own, but they are lipids that are combined with either sialic group or phosphoryl group or amino group or sulfate group. Now, the presence of these charge or polar group make some of these lipids amphipathic. When you say a lipid is amphipathic, what it means is that while a portion of that lipid is water soluble, another portion of the same lipid is um, non-soluble in water. So that means they have affinity for both water and organic solvents. And so, particularly lipids um, that are amphipathic, for example, the phospholipids, this is the advantage that they have that make them or that qualify them to be a part of or to form a part of the structure of the cell membranes. Because if you look at the structure of the cell membranes, the cell interacts with anything. They interact with lipids, they interact with polar solvents, they interact with water, they interact with anything, because their cell membrane is made up of amphipathic lipid. For example, is the phospholipid. So lipids are very vital, and they are very, very useful in day-to-day life. So we can simply say that lipids are hydrophobic in nature because of the high amount of hydrocarbons in their structure. Because of that, they are insoluble in water, and they are soluble easily in non-polar solvents such as chloroform, benzene, and esters and ethers. Now, they can easily be separated from other biological materials through extraction into organic solvents because they have hydrophobic nature. Now, we look at lipids. Examples of lipids include you have the fats, you have the oils, you have the steroids, and then waxes. These are examples of lipids. Now, earlier said that lipids are not useless. They are not altogether detrimental. They have their good roles, they have their functions that are important in the various processes that occur in the body. So we'll quickly take a look at the functions of lipids. Now, lipids have their storage function. So triglycerides, for example, are the storage form of lipids. So lipids are stored as triglycerides and they are stored in various parts of the body for future use. So that means in a situation where there's no glucose available, these lipids that are stored can be broken down to serve as alternative source of energy in the absence of glucose or holding forth until glucose becomes available again. So you see that lipids have their function. And also lipid make up the structural component of membranes, cell membranes, particularly. For example, you have the phospholipids, they make up cell membranes. And in cell membranes, so apart from phospholipids, you also have cholesterol molecules that make up the lipid component. So lipid also serve as metabolic regulators. They are involved in regulating one metabolic activity in the body or the other. For example, steroid hormones, they are very vital in metabolic activities, and then the prostaglandins too. Now, lipid also can act as surfactants, as detergents and emulsifying agents in the body. For example, emulsification of fats. Lipids also play a role. They are part of the component of bile that is very useful for the emulsification of fat. And you know that without bile, any food, lipid containing food that you eat will not be easily absorbed. Fat and bile will always quickly act in the upper intestine to emulsify fat components so that they can easily be absorbed into the circulation. Now, lipids also as electric insulators in the neurons. If not for the activities of lipids in the neurons or around the neurons, you can see a human being will just be shocked. You just touch somebody and the person, you feel that shocking sensation that this just like you touch a surface or something that is close to or connected to electricity that is naked. If there's no insulation, it will shock. Just like the rubber insulates around the wire so that it doesn't transmit energy to come and transmit signal to come and cause shock to an individual. The same way lipids insulate the um, neurons such that so that one individual you will not touch a person and the person will begin to shock you. So if I can literally explain it like that for a easy explanation for you to easily understand. Now also they provide the insulation against changes in external temperatures. So because of the fat, particularly the subcutaneous fat, there can be changes in external temperature, but your body is still able to withstand that external temperature. So whether you are feeling cold or you are feeling hot, those changes, whether you find yourself in a cold environment or in a hot environment, those changes are regulated by the activities of lipids in the body. Now, lipids are also important because they give shape and contour to the body. That's why you see that somebody who has good storage of lipid in his body, you see the contour very well. You see the breast protruding, you see the buttocks, you see the hip, you see the arms, you see the shoulders lifted, you see the foldings of the neck. All these things are made possible by lipids. And so you see somebody who's also very skinny, doesn't have so much lipid, you can hardly find the shape of that person. Sometimes they almost look straight because there's no storage of lipid in the body. So lipids also have their own advantages. That's why you see a lot of people go around to do BBL here and there because they want to have shape. Now, part of the things that go on in that BBL is the insertion of fat, collecting fat from one place and putting in another place. They also protect against um, they provide protection for our internal organs. They also help in the absorption of the fat soluble vitamins. And then also they give, um, they make your food very tasty and palatable. So you see that there are certain foods that when you see the lipids, when you taste it, you know that this food is very sweet. Lipids most times contribute to the palatability of food.